Introduction. Have you ever spent hours reading your notes, highlighting every single line, and feeling so sure that this time you finally got it? But then the next day comes. You sit down for your test, and suddenly your mind goes completely blank. Nothing. All those hours gone. It's frustrating, isn't it? You worked hard, you gave it time, and yet the information just slipped away. But here's the truth, it's not your fault, because most of us were never actually taught how to learn. We were only taught how to memorize, temporarily. We've been stuck in a system that rewards short term cramming, but never teaches deep understanding or long term retention. That's why you can study for 6 hours straight and still forget 80% of it a few days later. But what if I told you there's a way to flip that completely? A study method so simple, so backed by neuroscience, that once you understand it, you'll never look at learning the same way again. It's the exact technique used by top students, memory champions, and even neuroscientists who dedicate their lives to understanding how the brain truly learns. It's called active recall. And in just a few minutes, you're going to learn exactly what it is, how it works, and how it can help you learn twice as much in half the time. So, before we dive into the method itself, let's start with one simple, fascinating question. How does your brain actually remember? The science of memory. Let's take a step back and look at what really happens when you learn something. Every time you read, listen, or watch something new, your brain stores that information in short term memory. But here's the catch: short term memory is like a temporary notepad, it fades fast. To make information stick, it has to move from short term memory into long term memory. And that transfer doesn't happen just by rereading or highlighting. It happens through one powerful process: retrieval. Your brain doesn't grow stronger when you see information. It grows stronger when you struggle to recall it. When you try to remember something, a definition, a formula, a concept, your brain fires up a specific network of neurons. That struggle is actually your brain rebuilding the pathway. Each time you recall it again, that path becomes clearer, stronger, and faster to access. Think of it like this. Imagine your brain as a forest. The first time you learn something, you create a small, faint trail through the trees. It's hard to walk through, branches everywhere. You can barely see the path. But every time you recall that same piece of information, you walk that trail again. You push aside the leaves, you make the path clearer. And before long, it becomes a wide, easy road that you can travel effortlessly. But if you just read and never walk that path, it gets overgrown. The forest takes it back, and the information, it disappears, just like that. That's why rereading feels familiar but doesn't make you remember. Your brain recognizes the path when it sees it, but it can't walk it on its own. So active recall is all about walking that path again and again until your brain can't forget. And that's the secret. The more you test yourself, the more your brain learns to remember effortlessly. So now that you know how memory truly works, let's talk about how to use this power in your daily study sessions. What is active recall? So now that you understand how memory works, let's talk about the secret technique that turns that knowledge into real results. It's called active recall. Active recall is the process of actively retrieving information from your memory instead of passively reviewing it. Sounds simple, right? But this one shift changes everything. Let's compare. When you're passively learning, you might be rereading your notes, highlighting every paragraph in your textbook, or watching the same lecture over and over again. It feels productive because your eyes are moving, your hands are busy, and your brain says, I've seen this before, I know it. But here's the trap. That's just familiarity, not understanding. Now let's flip it. When you use active recall, you close your notes, you look away from the screen, and you ask yourself, what do I actually remember? It's that moment of silence, that mental pause when your brain starts searching, digging, connecting pieces together. That's where real learning begins. Let's try something right now. 30 seconds ago, I explained how memory is formed, how information moves from short-term to long-term memory. Can you recall it? What's the key process that makes it happen? If your brain is working to pull that answer out, that's active recall in action. You're not reading, you're retrieving. And in that moment, you're training your brain to hold on to that information longer and recall it faster. Think of it like a mental workout. Every time you try to remember, you're lifting the weight of knowledge. Each rep builds strength. Each recall builds connection. That's why top students, memory champions, and even neuroscientists uses this method, because it's not about how many hours you study. It's about how many times you rebuild that memory path. So now that you know what active recall is, the next question is, how can you actually use it step by step to study smarter and remember more in less time? Let's find out. How to use active recall. All right, now that you know what active recall is, let's talk about how to actually use it step by step so you can start transforming the way you study today. There are 4 simple, science backed methods you can use. Each one trains your brain to remember smarter, not harder. Let's dive in. Method 1, the question method. Instead of filling your notes with long, dry sentences, turn them into questions. For example, instead of writing, open quote, the brain consolidates memory during sleep. Write this instead. When does the brain consolidate memory? Close quote. Do you see the difference? The first one gives you information. The second one challenges your brain to recall it, because when you ask questions, you're forcing your mind to retrieve information. And every time you do that, the neural connection gets stronger. Here's how you can start right now. Go through your notes. Flashcards, rewrite each key point as a question. Then, without looking, try to answer them out loud or on paper. It's like turning your notes into a personal quiz, and your brain loves quizzes. Method 2, the blur method. This one's incredibly powerful and brutally honest. Here's how it works. Study for 25 minutes, fully focused, no distractions. Then close your notes. Grab a blank sheet of paper. Now, write down everything you can remember. Every fact, concept, or idea you can recall from that session. Don't worry if it's messy. Don't worry if you forget things. That's the whole point. Once you're done, open your notes again and compare what you missed. Fill in the gaps. Then later, a few hours or a day after, try the same recall again without looking. You'll be amazed how much more sticks the second time. Because the blur method isn't about being perfect. It's about revealing the truth of what you actually know. When I first tried this, I realized something shocking. I thought I had memorized everything, but when I closed my notebook, my mind went completely blank. That's when I learned understanding isn't the same as recalling. Method 3, flashcards. Digital or physical, any elements. This one's a classic, and for a good reason. Flashcards combine active recall and spaced repetition, 2 of the most powerful learning tools ever discovered. You can use apps like Anki or Quizlet, or go old school with paper cards. Here's the key. Don't just write long sentences. Instead, write a question on one side and the answer on the other. For example, cue it as active recall. A, actively retrieving information from memory instead of rereading. Then test yourself regularly, every day, every few days, every week. Each time you answer correctly, the brain gets stronger at recalling it. Think of it as building mental flashpoints, tiny sparks of memory that light up faster each time you practice. Method 4, teach it out loud. Now, this one might sound strange, but it's actually one of the most effective ways to master anything. After you study something, try explaining it out loud, as if you're teaching it to a friend or even to an imaginary student. Because if you can teach it clearly, you truly understand it deeply. When I first started doing this, I realized how much I thought I knew until I tried to explain it. That's when the holes in my understanding became clear. And once you find those holes, you can fill them and your confidence skyrockets. So don't be afraid to talk to yourself while studying. Your brain remembers better when it speaks. So those are the 4 methods of active recall. 1, turn your notes into questions. 2, use the blur method to expose what you really remember. 3, practice with flashcards for constant testing. 4, teach it out loud to master it. But here's the thing. Even if you're doing all this right, timing still matters, because what separates average learners from memory masters isn't just how they study, it's when they study again. That's what we'll explore next. The secret behind long-term retention. Spaced repetition. When to use active recall. So you already know what active recall is and how to use it. But here's the question that separates average learners from those who master their memory. When should you use it? Because timing changes everything. Let's start with the key principle. Active recall works best when it's combined with something called spaced repetition. Here's what that means. You don't just test yourself once, you test yourself again after 1 day, then after 3 days, then after a week, and again after a month. Each time you revisit the material, your brain says, oh, this again, I remember this, and it strengthens that neural pathway, like adding another layer of steel to a bridge. You're not just memorizing, you're building a memory fortress that gets stronger every time you return to it. Let's make it practical. Here's a simple routine you can start using today. Step 1, study your material. Read it, understand it, take brief notes. Step 2, recall. Close your book or your laptop and try to write or say everything you can remember from memory. Step 3, review. Open your notes again, check what you missed, and correct yourself. Step 4, recall again later, the next day, 3 days later, a week later. That's the rhythm that makes information stick. Here's a real-world example. Let's say you're studying biology today. You spend 30 focused minutes learning about the structure of a cell. Tomorrow, you test yourself. You draw the diagram, label what you remember. 3 days later, you test again. A week later, one more time. By the end of the month, something incredible happens. You'll remember more in those 30 minutes than someone who crams for 6 straight hours the night before an exam. Because cramming only forces your brain to store information short term. But spacing it out, that's how you convince your brain this is important, keep it. Making active recall a habit. So now you understand what active recall is and when to use it. But here's the real challenge, turning it into a habit. Because let's be honest, learning something once is easy. Doing it every day, that's where real mastery begins. Start small. Don't try to apply active recall to every subject at once. Pick just one. Maybe it's biology or history or that tough math topic you've been avoiding. Focus on mastering the process first, not the quantity. Once you've built momentum with one subject, adding others will feel natural, even effortless. Next, use cues. Habits grow from reminders. Keep your study cards on your desk. Set daily review notifications on your phone. Use sticky notes with small prompts like recall before review. These cues act as gentle nudges, pulling you back into the rhythm of learning, even on days you don't feel like it. And keep your sessions short and consistent. You don't need marathon study blocks. Just 25 to 30 focused minutes a day. It's not about studying harder, it's about studying smarter and regularly. That daily consistency trains your brain to expect learning. It becomes automatic, like brushing your teeth, something you do without overthinking. Celebrate your small wins. Track your progress. Notice how much faster you recall information, how much longer it stays in your memory, how confident you feel before a test or presentation. Each improvement, no matter how small, is proof that your brain is adapting, evolving. And remember this line, because it might just change the way you study forever. Mastery isn't built by cramming once. It's built by testing yourself daily until your brain simply can't forget. Common mistakes and how to avoid them. Now, before you start mastering active recall, let's talk about something crucial, the mistakes that stop most learners from making real progress. Because if you understand these early on, you'll save yourself months of wasted effort. Mistake number 1, just rereading instead of testing. This is the trap almost everyone falls into. You feel productive when you're highlighting notes or reading a chapter for the third time. But here's the truth. Your brain only grows when it struggles to recall, not when it passively absorbs. So next time you catch yourself rereading, close the book, look away, and ask, what did I just learn? That's when real memory begins to form. Mistake number 2, doing recall too soon. Right after you study, your memory is still fresh. If you test yourself immediately, it feels easy, but it doesn't create lasting connections in your brain. Instead, wait, let your brain forget a little, then recall it after a few hours, or better yet, the next day. That small struggle to remember, that's your brain strengthening the neural pathway. Mistake number 3, overloading yourself with too many questions at once. Active recall isn't about quantity, it's about depth. If you try to review 50 questions in one session, you'll remember none of them deeply. So slow down. Pick fewer questions, but engage more deeply with each. Visualize the concept, say it out loud, teach it to yourself. Final takeaways, closing. So let's take a deep breath and bring everything we've learned together. Here's the truth. You don't need to study longer. You need to study smarter. Active recall isn't about rereading, it's about retrieving, pulling information out of your mind again and again until your brain can't forget. It works because your brain grows through effort. Each time you struggle to remember something, you're literally strengthening the neural pathway, building knowledge that lasts for years, not just for exams. And when you combine active recall with spaced repetition, that rhythm of 1 day, 3 days, 1 week, 1 month, you create a system that makes learning almost automatic. No more cramming, no more anxiety, just clarity, focus, and progress. Remember this, you don't need more hours, you need better methods. Because once you learn how to learn, you'll never fear studying again. You'll walk into every exam, every challenge, every opportunity with confidence, knowing your mind is trained, sharp, and ready. If this video helped you, share it with a friend who's still spending 6 hours a day reading the same notes over and over. And don't forget to subscribe for more science backed strategies that will help you master your mind, your habits, and your future.